This hardline Iranian general is a major player in talks with US over war. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Dubai United Arab Emirates AP. As negotiations with the United States hang in the balance, a hardline Iranian general linked to notorious attacks at home and abroad over the past decades is believed to have seized a place near the center of power. Brig. Gen. Ahmad Vahidi, who heads Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, has become a major player in formulating Iran's tough stance in negotiating a possible end to the war with the United States, experts say. He is believed to be part of a small clique in direct contact with Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who remains in hiding after being reportedly wounded in the Feb. 28 Israeli strikes that killed his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Like everything in Iran since the war began, who ultimately controls decision-making remains uncertain. As people within the upper ranks of Iran's theocracy vie for power, they can gain or lose favor quickly. Vahidi himself hasn't been seen publicly since Feb. 8 weeks before the war began. On Thursday, Iranian media carried contradictory reports on Vahidi meeting with Pakistan's Interior Minister in Tehran, who carried a message regarding negotiations with the US and met with other top Iranian officials. A longtime veteran of the ruling system, Vahidi helped shape Iran's support of militant groups across the region, is accused of a role in the 1994 bombing of a Jewish center in Argentina, and in 2022 led domestic security forces in a bloody crackdown on protesters. Elevated to guard commander this year after his predecessor was killed early in the war, he leads the most powerful force in Iran, with its arsenal of ballistic missiles and its fleet of small boats threatening Persian Gulf shipping. Read more. Vahidi and members of his inner circle have likely consolidated control over not only Iran's military response in the conflict, but also Iran's negotiations policy, the Washington-based Institute for the Study of War said. Iran's war strategy has been to keep a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz, blocking oil and gas exports and causing a global energy crisis. At the same time, it has struck hard against oil facilities, hotels and infrastructure in Gulf Arab nations. In negotiations, it has held out against U.S. demands that it surrender its stockpile of highly enriched uranium, betting that it cannot last the U.S. in the ongoing standoff, and that President Donald Trump will be reluctant to resume outright war that could bring greater damage to America's Gulf allies. That likely reflects Vahidi's confrontational style. He comes from that mindset of unending revolution, unending resistance, said Kenneth Katzman, a senior fellow at the Sufin Group, a New York-based think tank. Vahidi believes the U.S. needs to be challenged at every turn, said Katzman, a senior Iran expert who advised the U.S. Congress for over 30 years. Vahidi boasted in January that Iran's defense power has developed to make it a high risk for any military action by an enemy. Vahidi, now a focal point in talks. Pakistan hosted talks in April between an Iranian delegation led by Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf and an American one headed by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. But it ended without any deal. Khalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi returned home to face criticism from inside the theocracy, suggesting they were too willing to make concessions. Khalibaf had to insist publicly that the talks had the support of the supreme leader. Since then, Vahidi has become the main point of contact for those negotiating with Iran, said a regional official with direct knowledge of the mediation. The official spoke on condition and anonymity to discuss the sensitive diplomacy. The extreme seclusion and unknown condition of the supreme leader have fueled speculation about jockeying among leaders for access to Khamenei and influence over him. In early May, President Masoud Pezeshkian, who many see as sidelined from influence by the Guard, went out of his way to say, "He got to see our dear leader and spoke to him for around 2 hours." But Holly Daggers, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, said it's likely the new supreme leader is in lockstep with a more hardline Guard, similar to his father, but in a more emboldened and uncompromising form. Analyst Cameron Bakari wrote that figures like Vahidi are not just managing war, they are actively reshaping succession, consolidating authority around a weakened supreme leader, and effectively capturing the state through crisis governance. Vahidi forged by years leading Quds Force-born Ahmad Vahidi in Iran's southern city of Shiraz in 1958. Vahidi, like many young men after the 1979 revolution, joined the Revolutionary Guard and fought against the invasion by Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein that sparked a bloody, 8-year war. Vahidi entered the Guard's nascent intelligence arm and soon was overseeing operations outside Iran. He gained the favor of powerful patrons, including Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, a later president. Rafsanjani said in his autobiography that Vahidi was involved in the 1980s Iran contract scandal, in which the Reagan administration sold weapons to Tehran in an effort to free hostages held by Iranian-backed militants in Lebanon. The U.S. later used the money from those sales to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua. Rafsanjani later intervened to protect Vahidi when then Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei sought to prosecute members of the Guard who failed to stop an incursion by armed fighters from an Iranian exile group in the late 1980s during the war. Around this time, Vahidi took over the newly formed Quds or Jerusalem Force. Over decades, the Quds Force helped create a network of proxy militant groups and allied governments around the Middle East. The Quds Force under Vahidi helped mastermind the 1994 bombing targeting Argentina's largest Jewish community center, killing 85 people and wounding 300 others, prosecutors say. Iran has denied involvement. American investigators also believe that under Vahidi, Iran organized the 1996 Khobar Towers bombing in Saudi Arabia, killing 19 U.S. service members and wounding hundreds. Tehran has denied being involved in that attack as well. Vahidi left the Quds Force in 1998. In 2010, while he was defense minister, the United States imposed sanctions on him over alleged involvement in Iran's nuclear program and its pursuit of weapons of mass destruction. More recently, as Interior Minister, Vahidi oversaw police units involved in a bloody, months-long crackdown on protests over the 2022 death of Mahsa Amini, who died in police custody after being arrested for not properly wearing the mandated headscarf to the liking of authorities. An Iranian newspaper later published a classified document that showed Vahidi's Interior Ministry ordered security agencies to monitor and photograph women not wearing the hijab, something he had denied was taking place. At around that time, Vahidi said in public comments that calls to remove the hijab were a colonial plan by Iran's enemies trying to undermine the Islamic Republic. The hijab has been a big barrier against the progress of effete Western culture, he said. Vahidi's role makes reaching an accord with Iran that much more difficult for the U.S., as does the continued obscurity over Iran's leadership. Trump wants a single interlocutor in Iran for negotiations, but the whole system has changed, said Hamidreza Azizi, an Iran expert at the Middle East Institute. It is not a one-man show. Vahidi is one alongside others, Azizi said. Some we know and some we don't know. Associated Press writers Saini Magdi in Cairo, Sarah El Deeb in Beirut, and Amir Varda and Nasser Karimi in Tehran, Iran, contributed to this report.